The dramatic day of developments in South Korea, a country now in the grip of a major political crisis.
Stunning developments in South Korea, a vibrant democracy and critical U.S. ally thrown into chaos today.
Where a political crisis clearly tested the strength of one of Asia's youngest democracies.
In fairness to South Korea's president, at least as of this recording, Yoon Suk Yeol, we've all said some things, had some thoughts around 11 p.m. of an evening, which seemed significantly less shrewd a few hours later. Perhaps the best way of understanding what happened in South Korea earlier this week is to reflect that most of us, with our dander up and a few sherries inside us, are restricted in our career-ending options to teeing off precipitously on social media. A president can barge into a nation's television schedules to declare martial law. This, at least, is what President Yoon did at around 2300 Seoul time on Tuesday night.
친애하는 국민 여러분, 저는
Yoon's surprise statement was pretty blood-freezing stuff. It summoned the spectre of forces allied to North Korea conspiring to subvert South Korea's constitutional order. It provided for the suspension of parliament, the banning of public assemblies, the censorship of media, and enjoined all medical staff to report for duty inside 48 hours. The object of all of which, said Yoon, was to, quote, crush anti-state forces that have been wreaking havoc. Before we get into what happened next, richly entertaining as it was, we should pause to ponder why Yoon would have pulled such a stroke. His stated reason that he was seeking to thwart malefactors conspiring in cahoots with Pyongyang is difficult to take seriously. The people at whom Yoon was pointing a quivering accusatory finger were mostly South Korea's Democratic Party, who aren't great fans of President Yoon but are basically stolid centre-leftists who have never displayed any obvious interest in uniting the Korean peninsula under the revolutionary leadership of Kim Jong-un. Possibly more pertinently, the Democratic Party are also the largest party in South Korea's National Assembly and have been making President Yoon's life difficult. They have strangled his budgets, threatened his ministers with impeachment, and made considerable hay with scandals relating to President Yoon's wife, Kim Kyun-hee, whose Wikipedia page boasts a controversies section perhaps longer than is ideal for a First Lady. President Yoon may also have been vexed by the fact that South Korean presidents are these days term limited to a single 5-year stint. His ends in 2027, and as things generally stood at this time yesterday, his chances of getting much done with the remainder of his time in charge may have looked annoyingly slender. It would appear, therefore, that what South Korea has witnessed is an attempt at an autogolpe, a rare variant of a coup d'etat in which the act is undertaken by someone who was already in charge to entrench their own power and or undercut opposition. South Korea has previously witnessed one such. Back in 1972, President Park Chung-hee, a former general who'd arrived in power in a Communal Garden coup d'etat in 1961, then actually gotten elected president 3 times, apparently wearied of the whole democratic rigmarole. President Park suspended parliament and imposed martial law, and though he stayed in charge another 7 years, neglected to consider the tendency for authoritarian rule to end messily for the authority. In 1974, he survived one assassination attempt in which his wife, Young-soo, was fatally injured, and in 1979 he was shot dead by his own intelligence chief when a dinner party argument escalated. All coups are a high-risk endeavour, but the autogolpe arguably carries an inflated risk of humiliation, of ending up as thoroughly beclowned as, to cite one recent example, President Pedro Castillo of Peru, who 2 years ago this week attempted to dissolve Congress, impose a curfew and rule by decree, only to end up bolting for sanctuary in the Mexican embassy and getting arrested en route by his own police escort. He is currently on the hook on a a variety of charges and looking at 34 years of prison ceviche. If the autogolpe is what Yoon thought he was doing, it's still difficult to discern what he thought he was doing. As ever, with dramatic convulsions orchestrated by stressed politicians, the possibility that he has simply taken leave of his senses cannot be ruled out, and as of this broadcast seems at least as plausible an explanation as any. If Yoon had arrayed any of South Korea's military behind him, he didn't do it quickly or ruthlessly enough to stop a quorum of South Korean MPs from gathering in the National Assembly, some after being helped over the fence around the building by obliging demonstrators, and voting unanimously that Yoon knock it off. Yoon didn't even square his own party, the Conservative People's Power, behind the manoeuvre. People's Power leader Han Dong-hoon apologised to the South Korean people and demanded that the president explain himself.
국회의 계엄 해제 요구가 있어
In the small hours, President Yoon went back on television and announced that, on mature reflection, etc. It will be difficult for Yoon to style it out from here. Parliament has tabled an impeachment motion. Yoon's defence minister, who does seem to have been in on the plot even if nobody else was, has tendered his resignation. Yoon will be well aware that South Korea has a record for dealing harshly with errant heads of state. President Park Geun-hye, who served from 2013 to 2017, was impeached, removed, arrested, tried and sentenced to a decades-long stretch, then pardoned and released after serving nearly 5 years. An ironclad rule of throwing a coup d'etat is the one to the effect of, come at the king, best not miss. President Yoon is probably about to discover that the dictum applies just as stringently when the king you've come at is yourself. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Mueller.